I am making what I assume to be the very poor decision of deciding to film this video at 11:20 on New Year's Eve. So look forward to that very chaotic background noise. Hey, what's up? Hello, it's Katie Colson here. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to talk about my most surprising reads of 2022. I know we're already into 2023, but I realized that this was a video that I really wanted to make because there were so many books that I read that really shocked me. Whether that was shocked me based on its content or shocked me based on how much I ended up liking it, I just really like watching these videos, and I didn't even think about making one for myself. And then when I was looking at my shelf, I was like, you actually have a lot to talk about. Now, a lot of these books, the reason that they are on my most surprising is because I went in with either no expectations or more likely very low expectations and then was absolutely blown out of the water with the fact that I ended up loving it or the fact that I ended up just enjoying it. So that's what we're going to talk about here. I have 12 to talk about, the first of which being Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. The reason this is on the list, very good reason, is that I have never liked an Alice Feeney book. I've read 3 of her books before this and given them all 1 or 2 stars. I have openly been very open about hating Alice Feeney's work. Her concepts always draw you in and you always think, you're like, for the first like 25%, you're like, God, yes. And then oh God, she just flies off the rails. Like, it's just ridiculous plot twist after plot twist after plot twist where you're just like, what are you doing? But this book, Daisy Darker, the whole time I was reading this, could not believe it was written by Alice Feeney. I put my blinders on. I was like, this is by a random author that I've never heard of before. Let's go in. Ended up loving it. 4 stars. Loved this book. You have to like And Then There Were None because this is a direct homage to And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I've read quite a few And Then There Were None retellings, reimaginings, whatever. But this is the only one that has done it right and done it with respect and done it with the actual vibes of And Then There Were None. And by that, what I mean is that it has to have 2 things, and these are the 2 things none of them ever have, is that it needs to be set on a secluded island where you can't get off and you can't get on. And then the other thing is it needs to be following the creepy ass poem. Daisy Darker is about a family of the Darkers who are very tumultuous. They're not good people. They're not good people. And basically the grandma is inviting them because she was told from a palm reader, I think, that she would die on her 80th birthday. So it's about to be her 80th birthday and she invites all of her family over, and she lives on this island where when the tide comes up, you can't get off the island. So once you're on, you're going to be there for 48 or 72 hours or something like that. So she invites the family over and is like, I'm here to read the will because I know I'm going to die. And when she reads the will, oh no, Granny had some shit up her sleeve, let me tell you. But then the next day they wake up, Granny is gone. Granny is kaput, okay? But then this creepy ass poem is popping up saying the way in which these people will die, and it's laying out all of the family, and this person's gonna die because of this and this. And the poem, creepy as shit, and obviously it starts happening, and they all start dropping off one by one by one. I loved it. I loved it. And honestly, I am so surprised to be saying that. The only other book on this list that I do not physically own is True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. Now, this is one that I had no expectations going into this because I had never heard of this book. There was a girl, Liana, on my Patreon who was reading it, and she was like, listen, I'm only a couple chapters in and I am loving it. Please pick up this book. And when I tell you, Liana and I, this book had us had us in a chokehold. I was messaging her every hour being like, have you got to this part yet? Have you got to this part yet? Oh my God, I'm gasping. This book is a ride. It is a ride, but I suggest the audiobook experience because this is kind of in the vein of a podcast mystery. And basically you're getting interviews of all of these people and it's told by a bunch of different narrators. And the story between Joseph Knox, who is an author who heard about this story from a female author that is not as famous as him, and she kept telling him I've got this story, I really need to figure out what happened to this missing girl, and it's a really good story. And he's like, nobody cares about a missing girl, they care about a dead girl. People don't care about the girl even, they want to know who did it, they care about the murderer. And this girl is I know this is a good story. And he's like backburnering her and like not paying attention to her. And then something ends up happening to this woman and he has to take over telling the story. And it is so good. It is such an experience. Like I highly suggest it. And I love that I went into this with no expectations because it blew me out of the water. I should say that these are not in any particular order. Like it's not that number 9 is, less shocking to me than number 7, except for number 1. Number 1 is the most shocking, and I'm sure you all know what it's going to be. But the next book I have to talk about is Temper by Lainey Fargo. And this is about a girl who becomes very obsessed with this man who is an actor and a theater director, and he kind of takes her in under his wing. And this is a very manipulative, messed up psychological thriller of what it's like when you're told that you have to give your all in acting. And what I mean by give your all is like you eat, sleep, and breathe this character and this play. You do nothing but live in this environment and it has to be your reality. And when I tell you, there are a lot of actors, there's a lot of plays, there's a lot of directors who they actually do this. Now here's the thing. I do not think that this is the book for most people. I do not think a lot of people are going to like this. And it's not because it's too highbrow. It's not because of any of that. It's because this book is written for a very particular audience. And it's a very small niche audience. A lot of people are going to read this and think it's hyperbolic. It's over the top. There's no way any of this would happen. Coming from somebody who I was in this scenario, this shit is real. Like you're balls deep, okay, in the theater acting cult. Because if you have ever been, like I have been in theater, God, like practically my whole life, I feel like that's what I went to college for. Like I literally have a degree in theater arts. So I've been well meshed in this environment. But when I moved to Atlanta, I did become indoctrinated in an acting cult. And I'm sure a lot of people can throw that word around very blasé and say anything is a cult, but I'm serious. It's a cult. It was a cult with a capital C. Listen, we're not going to get into my particular experience in an acting cult because we'd be here for a million years. And I'm sure people have questions. We could make a video about it if you want or whatever. But people would be like, oh my God, like I would never get into a cult. That would never happen to me. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It is much easier than you think to be indoctrinated into a cult, especially when you're being indoctrinated into something that you already find joy in, like acting or art in any way. It's very easy. Singing, all of it, modeling. There's a lot of cults in these environments, and it is very, very easy to get caught up in this. So reading this, I related to this so much, and I know for a fact that people would read this and be like, there's no way. Yes, there is. I can tell you from personal experience that this is not off the table. That I felt like my experience was being told by Lainey Fargo, but this was so good. And again, I'm not saying that everybody's gonna love it. I'm saying I loved it. Tinder is the Flesh by Augustina Bastarrica. This cover is cool. I picked it up and a Barnes & Noble employee stopped me and was like, hey, listen, I just finished that book and I loved it, but it's messed up. And I think that you should know what it's about going in because it's not a book to get into lightly. And I stopped him. I said, sure, sir. Stop. I'll take it. You had me at hello. You had me at, I need to warn you before you pick up this book. And I picked this up. And when I tell you that I was sitting in a post office parking lot and I was sitting in a liquor store parking lot devouring this, I could not put it down. And I'm embarrassed about that because this book is messed up. This book is weird. And when I tell you, it was my second best book of 2022. This is about where apparently a virus spreads to animals that makes their meat poisonous to human beings. But what does society do? Do they become vegetarians? Do they become vegans? No. They legalize cannibalism. And when you're reading this book, it's so believable. Capitalism and consumerism and government conspiracies, they can so swiftly turn the tide on anything. And they can make anything, not only can they make anything doable, they can make you want it. They can package it in a way that makes you want it. And what they do is not only do they legalize cannibalism, but you are following from the main point of view of this guy who used to run a butchery for pigs. And now it has been converted into a butchery for human beings. And it's really gross. There is a lot of disgusting talk of the way that they're butchering these people. This is a very short book and it packs such a punch with every single line. And you're like, oh my God, yeah, this is exactly what we would do. Yeah, this is exactly what humanity would turn to. And there's so many things to say about this book. There's too many things. I could talk about it forever. I have talked about it so many times, but I am so surprised at how much of a hoe I was for this book. Every single sentence, I was just eating it up. Next, we have Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. Now, why this is on my most surprising is actually because I picked this up knowing that there was a character that had diabetes, and that's why I wanted to pick it up. But the reason that it's on the most surprising is because I loved this book for so many other reasons that I was not anticipating. And this is not a book that is well loved. I pretty much think that me and Haley Hughes are like the only people that love this book. But this is about a woman. We're following a female serial killer, and she has killed a couple different people in her life for a variety of reasons. And the way that she kills them is so interesting because it's not necessarily like she's going out moidawing people. It's that she might see somebody on the verge of death and she's like, what if I just helped that happen? We're getting very close to midnight, or we're getting closer, and it's going to get louder and louder. So I apologize, but also, yay, 2023. But then also her husband, who is a type 1 diabetic, has recently died, and the police think that she did it, which is hilarious because she's accused of 4 murders. She only is guilty of 3. So she is trying to basically exonerate herself from the crime she didn't commit, which is her husband, who she truly loved. And then also these other murders are being brought up, and she's like, oh shit, I mean, I did do that I did do, but I don't want to go to jail for it, but I did do that, but I didn't do this other one. Like this other one I didn't do. And her relationship with her best friend in this book is so well done. And the platonic relationship that they have is so deep and complex and interesting, and honestly one of the best relationships I've ever read about. The diabetic representation in this book is exquisite. It is so good, and Sasha Rothschild does have a husband that has type 1 diabetes. The reason I'm so shocked is that I did not expect to love the things that I ended up loving about this book. I thought I was just going to care about the diabetes representation, but there was so much more about it that I ended up loving. So I can't wait to reread this, maybe in 2023. And then we have The End of Men by Christina Sweeney Baird. This is a book I actually read twice in 2022, and I really enjoyed it. And I never hear people talk about this book. Never. This was sent to me by Nicole Nickerson, which is one of my favorite patrons. She's so much fun. She sent this to me and she was like, listen, you're gonna like it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Thank you so much. I like the cover, you know, this sounds intriguing. The summary sounds intriguing. And then I just kept looking for reviews for it and kept looking for people to talk about it. And I couldn't find anybody talking about this book. And I was like, oh, okay, which kind of lessened my expectations. Like my expectations got significantly lower because it's just not talked about. And I started reading this book and it had me by the throat. It had me by the heart. It had me by the throat. It had me by the balls, and it had me by the brain. Okay. Because I'm not saying this is 5 stars, but it's so good. It's so good. This is such a amazing 4-star book. And when I tell you, I cried so many times, not like cried, but like teared up, one tear coming out of one eye at a time, so many times reading this book. Because for me personally, it had me, because this is about a pandemic, and it is about basically, you know, the Rona, you know, but if it only affected men. It is so sad. It is so heartbreaking. It's so sad. And you're seeing all these women doing their best, and what these women would do to save their husbands, to save their fathers, to save their children, their sons, what these mothers are having to, like, literally there are people in this book that have husbands, and if their husbands seem like they might be ill, they're like, you have to lock yourself in the basement. I cannot see you because you could get my son sick. And I'm not going to lose, if I'm going to lose you, I'm not going to lose him. And it's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. You're following so many different characters. There's an insane amount of characters in this book, which is awesome because you're getting a lot of different experiences. There's so much also amazing feminist points of view. And there's also a lot of toxic feminist points of view, which I thought was really amazing that Christina Sweeney Baird was not afraid of that. She was like, yeah, there is a lot of amazing, positive femininity or feminism, but then there is toxic feminism. And we're going to talk about both. And I was like, wow. I highly suggest this. I'm not saying it's going to be 5 stars, but you're going to get a 5-star experience out of it at the least. The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. My jaw was on the floor with this book. This just, it grabs you and you don't know what's going on. For the very first like half of this book, you are so confused. You have no idea what's happening. And then when things start clicking, your jaw will drop. I was in a Kroger parking lot and I was reading this book and I was like gripped. I could not go into the store because I needed to know what was going to happen. I needed to know. The reason that I'm putting this on most surprising is because almost nobody I know really enjoyed this book. They gave it like 3 stars at most. They were like, oh, yeah, okay. But I loved it, and I loved it more upon reread because when I read it for the first time, I gave it 3.5 stars, and I literally said in my review, I don't know how I feel. I know that it's good, but I don't know how good it is. I don't know. I need to reread. And I reread it and put it on my top books of the year of 2022. I love this book. It is done with such nuance. I'm not going to spoil anything. I don't want to get into what's actually happening because that's a spoiler and I really want you to go in blind. So all I'll say is the very vague synopsis of this book where you are following the point of view of Teddy, who is a man who lives secluded on the last house on Needless Street, and he lives alone and he has a lot of mental disorders and like a lot of OCD and things where he's used to living alone. And when Dee, this girl, moves in next to him, his whole routine is thrown into the air and he doesn't know what to do and his life starts spiraling because he's used to having a routine and Dee is messing up his routine. And the talk of mental disorders, there's so many mental disorders in this book that are done with such nuance, but you're following Teddy, you're following Dee, you're also following a young girl that lives with Teddy, and you're also following the point of view of Teddy's cat. It's so good. But this is on my most surprising, not only because a lot of people in the community and a lot of people on Goodreads do not like this book, and I feel like it gets unjust reviews, in my opinion, but it's also on my most surprising because when I reread it, I gave it 5 stars, and it's one of my best books of the year. Okay, I'm gonna stop for a second because it's... Can you hear that? It's about to be midnight, so I need to stop for a second because it's about to get insanely loud. Oh my God. Holy shit. I just needed y'all to see that, so that you knew that I wasn't crazy when I said it's fucking wild out there. It's literally blasting off like Team Rocket. Like everybody around me is shooting off fireworks. Happy New Year! And we're going to talk about House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Surprised isn't even a good enough word. Every single emotion that you could possibly have about anything, I had about this book. I had a lot of emotions. A lot. It drained me. This book broke me as a human being. I never thought I would see these tabs. What are you talking about? Like, I'm even looking at these going, am I serious? Like, did I really do that? I'm just going to be vague as possible. This is about a guy who lives in this house, and when he measures it on the outside and measures it on the inside, it's like 1/2 inch bigger on the inside than it is the outside. And at first he's like, oh, well, I'm sure I did something wrong. But he keeps measuring it over and over and over again and getting like contractors out there to do special like deep measurements that are very accurate, and they also can't figure out what's going on. They're like, that is impossible. That is physically impossible. So he starts to kind of lose his mind because he's like, what is going on? And then the more and more he starts losing his mind, the more this house becomes illogical. Like there's like doors and rooms and hallways that are just showing up that weren't there before, and the house is bigger, it's smaller, it's bigger, it's smaller. It's absolutely insane. And I will tell you, I was absolutely drained by this book. I never wanted to look at a book again. I was infuriated. But then I also loved it. I loved it, but I hated it, but I loved it, but I hated it. But the thing that you need to know going into this, and this is something that surprised me, is that I was a good like 30, I was like 50% of the way into this book when Jordaline told me that this is a satire on academic writing. And I was like, what? And then when I went and looked it up, it is. So if you're reading this like it's just a normal, or not normal, but like a dude trying to get other people to suck his metaphorical dick, which is like partly what it is, then you're gonna hate it. But if you read it like it's a white dude making fun of other white dudes that think they're really smart, it's amazing. The next two we have to talk about in tandem because they're by the same author. And honestly, they're both on this list because of the author, and that is Colleen Hoover. I gave both of these 5 stars. What? By Colleen Hoover? Colleen Hoover? Book talk sensation Colleen Hoover? Romance, but why is she shelved as romance? Colleen Hoover? Now, this, all your perfects, I'm shocked because I need to reread this because I'm like, there's got to be something toxic about this that I just wasn't paying attention to or just glossed over. But this, Graham, the man of this book, I love him. I love him. And I've seen people review this and say that he cheats on her. And I'm like, I think I blacked that out because I do not remember that. But I loved this. And this is a lot about infertility. And it's about a couple who they basically have been like writing, like he's been writing letters to her and putting it in his chest and saying, if you ever want to divorce me, if you ever seriously plan on leaving me, I want you to open this and read it. And he's been writing her these letters at their worst times and their best times. And it's so sad and it's so beautiful and heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. But it is about a woman who cannot have children and how society tells you that you have to have children and you're not a woman if you don't, and how that really breaks her mentally, and the constant trying over and over again and being told no over and over again and feeling like a failure and that your body's a failure. And I just adored this relationship. I loved it so much. And I am going to say that I do recognize that I feel like I do need to reread this because it's Colleen Hoover. Like, am I seriously telling you that I loved this man? I am. Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is an absolute 5 stars. I'm obsessed with this book. I went into it with like no expectations really. Like I went in with both of these. I went in with low expectations because it's Colleen Hoover. But this was a book that was told the first month that I started Patreon, this was the book that was so highly voted for that they wanted to see my reactions to this. They wanted to see me do a reading vlog. And oh my God, I was gasping, like screaming, clawing at my face, throwing the book on the ground. This book is wild. Like, is Colleen okay? I think Colleen is locked up in somebody's basement and nobody's checking on her because one, the fact that this has been shelved as romance. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? No! This is about Lowen, okay? And she is a writer. Okay. And Jeremy, this guy, is his name Jeremy? It starts with a J. Yeah, Jeremy Crawford. All of the people in this book are super toxic. There's not a single likable character in this book. Not one likable character. Even the son. He's got the ick. You know, something wrong about him. But there is this guy, Jeremy, and his wife, Verity, is in a coma, and she was like basically like George R. R. Martin. Like she was writing this very in-depth, really, really highly acclaimed series, and she goes into a coma, but she has like a bunch of notes that she has kept about how the series is going to end. And Jeremy is like, hey, Lowen, would you mind finishing out the series? Okay. But like, you have to like really get in her headspace. So Lowen decides to move in to the house in which the wife in the coma is upstairs and starts reading through her manuscript or all her notes and is supposed to be writing this book, but then is also like falling in love with her husband while his comatose wife is upstairs, maybe comatose. Yeah. And it's terrifying. This book is so creepy. And literally, if you're reading this, knowing that this author is book talk famous for romance and that her books are like shelved as wide successes in the romance, and then you read this, it's gonna blow your mind. And if anybody wants to know team manuscript or team letter, I'm team manuscript and nobody could change my mind. And honestly, I am so surprised to be holding up both of these books and not only giving them 5 stars, but showing them off on my shelves. I have 2 more to talk about. And these definitively are the most surprising. The most surprising. One of which I have spoken about ad nauseum in the last couple of videos. And I want to be sorry, but I'm not. But something I am sorry for is that I'm sure there's so many people out there that are going to hear me talk about this and are going to go and pick this up and then are going to be like furious that I ruined their lives. Killing Stalking by Coogie. I know I've said this before. I've said this like in 3 videos at this point.
Look me in the eye. Are you hearing me? We're up close, it's you and me. You better never in your life even think in your head, Katie Colson recommended this book. No, she didn't. And you can't prove it. You cannot prove it. The police are going to come asking, and you can't prove it.
Okay, cool. Let's go back. The emotional trauma from this book, I am not willing and I am not ready to pay for your emotional trauma. I'm not going to, okay? When the psychologist comes and asks you where everything went wrong, my name better not come out of your mouth, okay? This is a manhwa. I cannot show you oh my God. I can't show you a single page of this book. It is up, okay? And I had not heard of this. I had never heard of it. And then I saw on the Goodreads Choice Awards that it was nominated for best manga or like graphic novel. I was like, I thought that one was kind of supposed to be like messed up or like, because just from the cover and the title. But then McKay was like, I love that book. And if you don't love it, don't tell me. Like, do not tell me. I'm obsessed. And I started reading this and very quickly messaged him and was like, I'm a sick, what is wrong with me? And then he made an entire video based on this series and why everyone should read it and why it's amazing. It's a psychological thriller horror, okay? It's about Sang-woo and Yoon Bum. And Yoon Bum is obsessed with Sang-woo, who is like the head boy. Like, he's like so popular and he's so cute and he's smart and he's built. And then you have Yoon Bum, who is scrawny and nerdy and nobody likes him. Nobody wants to talk to him. He's like the smelly boy in the corner and everybody makes fun of him. And he's obsessed with him. Yoon Bum is obsessed with Sang-woo. And he like infantilizes every interaction that they have and says like that it's romantic and that like Sang-woo's like saved his life and all this stuff. And Sang-woo is like, I don't even know your name. But Yoon Bum starts stalking Sang-woo, and then that's not enough. So he breaks into his house because he just needs to be close to him. He wants to lay in his bed. He wants to wear his clothes. He wants to smell his deodorant. And he breaks in, and while he is romanticizing every tiny thing in the house, he hears a noise from the basement. That's weird. What is that? And he goes down there to check, and Sang-woo has a girl tied up in the basement. And he's been doing a lot of weird shit to her. And then Sang-woo finds Yoon Bum in the basement and is like, well, I have to kill you because now you know my secret. But Yoon Bum is like, no, I'm in love with you. It's like the Harley Quinn Joker thing. Like, he's like, I'm in love with you. If you have to kill me, then that's what I deserve. You're amazing. You're like a god. And Sang-woo is like, what did you just say? Like, are you crazier than me? Like, what the fuck? And what starts is the most messed up obsession love story where like you can't really call it a love story because these two people are so mentally unwell that like they are not capable of the love that more sound-minded people are capable of, but the kind of psychologically messed up love that they feel for each other. But I love it. We're here. We're here for my most shocking, most surprising book experience, synopsis, expectations that I had in 2022. This takes the cake. There's nothing more surprising than this, okay? For a myriad of reasons. And you should all be guessing what it is, unless somehow you forgot that I read it in 2022. I surely can't. The Mindfuck series by S.T. Abby. What? Okay, look at the spine. This will tell you everything. I didn't just break the spine. I'm surprised it's still holding on. It's holding on by a damn thread. I'm going to tell you what. This is 5 books in one. But this is about Logan and Lana. Logan is an FBI agent, and he is tasked with hunting down serial killers. And he runs into Lana at a bar, and they start like kind of a little flirtation kind of moment. And Lana is a serial killer. And she is actually a serial killer that he's looking for. And he doesn't know that. And she knows it. She knows because he will tell her things about cases that he's not supposed to. And the FBI is like looking for the serial killer going like, it's definitely like a white man, a straight white man around this age. And Lana's like, I'm sorry. It's like I have something in my throat. This is not a romance. This looks like And the other covers of this make it look like it's like a dark, smutty erotica. It is not. The love story is so on the back burner. Honestly, the love story is really boring. The love story, no. Like, it's just there to bring Logan into the story and to give it an extra element. The story is really about Lana and why she's committing these crimes, who she's killing, why she's killing them, the way that she goes about killing them, and the way she goes about getting away with it. And when I tell you, this is the reason why it's on the most surprising. The first 2 books, I gave the first one 1 star, and I gave the second one 2 stars. Nobody out there can convince me that the first 2 books are good. So many people give the first 2 5 stars, and they say it's absolutely amazing. I don't agree. I do not agree. The first 2 books are not good. That's my opinion, okay? But book 3, the first line of book 3, not even the first line, when you just see who the point of view is from, Hadley? Excuse me, what? It hit the ground running. And from book 3 on, it went up a rate. It was like, I gave the third one 3 stars, the fourth one 4 stars, and the fifth one 5 stars. I loved the ending of this book so much, and it just ramps up and up and up and up, and you're literally reading it like, I was dying, because the first 2 books, I was reading it at work, and I was like, this is so cringy. And then as it got farther on, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And the people that were at my job were like, I thought you said the book was bad. And I was like, shut up, shut up. I'm in love. The last book made this entire thing 5 stars. Even though the first 2 books are not good and I will not change my mind, it is so worth it. It is so, I'm so glad that I kept reading it, because everybody was telling me like, listen, it gets so much better. Like, if you're not liking it now, you will like it. And they were right. But when I tell you that now I get what the girlies are talking about, I never in my life, from before I started reading it, hearing TikTok talk about it, hearing BookTube talk about it, like Book Talk, BookTube, hearing people that I enjoy in the community that I'm friends with talking about this book, did not think I was going to like it. Thought it was all going to be 1 star, the stupidest thing I'd ever read. Started reading it, held to that even stronger because I didn't like it. Book 2 was like, absolutely not. And then, shocker upon shock, I love this book. And nobody's more surprised than me. Okay, that is going to wrap it up for my most surprising and shocking reads of 2022. I think this is a really exciting and fun video, not only for me to make every year, but even more so, I love watching them. So if you have made one, please let me know. And I don't know if you can link it down below. If you can, do that. And also, if you've gotten this far into the video and you're not sure what to comment, then leave the shocked face emoji. Either like the one where the eyes are just like really big, or whatever shocked face emoji that you think of when you think of being shocked and you want to put emoji for it. Put that in the comments down below. If you just want to tell me that you got this far into the video and you're here to support your girl, thank you so much. And I want to say that I hope that all of you are having an amazing day, evening, night, dusk, dawn, whatever it is you're having in whatever part of the world you are currently having it in. And I will see you in a video coming very soon. Bye.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody and stained from the people who deceive me.